Hi, everyone. This is a demo of resolution and how you should pay attention to resolution when you do project 3, because you're making a collage. So you're going to be needing to collect images, and when you collect images, you're going to put them into a folder, and you can label that folder whatever you want, but like idea folder, something like that, and then call it, whoever's name you're doing, and portrait. So in order to do this demo, I made a drawing for you. And it's about me. So I decided that since I don't have copyright to a lot of images that I could, would have to use. So it's not so important in your case because you're learning as students. But in my case, I'm making a video for you. So I decided that since I don't have copyright to a lot of images, such as a painting by Frida Kahlo, I would show you on a self-portrait. So here I am. I'll show you this is Photoshop, of course. And I made my document, I think it was 12 by 15. So this could be printed on 13 by 19 inch paper. So you could get a nice print of this inkjet, and that's what we would have done in an on-ground class, or we would do in an on-ground class, meaning a place where we have a printer, access to a inkjet printer. But in any case, if you like what you do with your collage portrait, you can get it printed. So if you print it smaller, you just resize it. And that's actually what I'm talking about today, is the size of images. So in this file, I made a rough sketch, and then I labeled it so bigger than I would normally, but that's so you can read it while I'm doing this demo. And I made 3 new layers: background, middle ground, foreground. And what I want to show you is that when you put images, and just let's pretend this is your folder full of images. I only have a few because I just did this today in anticipation of this lecture. So I might work on it some more. But what I did was collect some images. And one of them, I've already done a mask. I already, painted out some of it. But what you do when you consider your images are, approximately what size you're going to need because you have a drawing. So let's say I know this is 12 inches in height. And this is about, a fifth of it or so. So, or a sixth of it. So I would say 2.5 inches this would be. So I need, these 2 segments look somewhat similar, 2 to 2.5 inches. So photos of Joan Kahn, I would need something about 2 by 3. So I'd look for images. You can also resize them, and I'll show you where. So I'm going to pull this image that I actually found of myself doing ceramics when I was, I don't know, only about, looks like really I was 12, around when I was 12 years old. So yeah, that's me. And I'm going to use this image, I've decided. So I want to look and see how big it is at what resolution. So I go image in Photoshop, image to the image menu, and then I say image size. And I'm looking at the dimensions of it in inches, the size of it, as well as the resolution. So I forgot to mention that I made my original document, which I told you was 12 by 15 inches, at 200 resolution, 200 pixels per inch resolution. That would be just adequate, in my opinion, to print. The optimum size to print is 300 pixels per inch, but we're trying to keep the size of the document somewhat smaller, manageable. You still, some of you couldn't get into the student show with the document size that you had, and I had to send out directions, which I hope you got in your email, telling you how to resize a file, make it smaller. So anyway, here's me, and notice that it tells me how big this image is at this resolution. Now, I had made the whole photograph to I resized it to 200 pixels per inch, but here's the size. So if I need it to be bigger than that, you could only go so big and still be able to have it printed, because otherwise it won't match the 200 resolution that's in my, that is my document already. So the one I've started is 200. So I want all the things that I use to be between 150 and 200. Otherwise, it won't look good. So that's what I'm trying to show you. Generally, you don't want resample at the bottom of your image size interface checked, because if you resample up, you will be making up pixels, and that's not a good idea since it doesn't do a very good job doing that. It just makes them look the same as the pixel they're around, and it gets fuzzy. So you can't resample up. In other words, you can't go from 200 to 300. Resampling down is very possible, and the image retains its clarity, or doesn't lose what it is, but you are only going to be able to use it in certain places, and it makes it smaller. So it makes the image smaller, but you can only use it for instance, the web. If you went down to 72 ppi, you could not print it. It would look fuzzy. So, or you would see pixelation. So basically what I'm telling you is, like, let's say that I do not resample, I uncheck resample. So all of these things have to maintain, all of this has to maintain a ratio. So if I make it like let's say I want it to be bigger. So I make the resolution 150, which is absolutely as low as I would go when you're trying to, match everything in a 200 ppi document. So 150, notice that you got out of that 4 by 4 inches. So that would be the biggest you could go with that image. So I'm going to actually put in, I think I only needed it to be 2 by 3 inches, something like that. So I'm going to go back up to 180 and see what the size is. It's 3 by 3. So I don't really need it. This one is good at 200. So I'm going to put in 200, which is exactly the size, the PPI of my original document, say okay. And now I'm going to place that image. So you can just go File, Place. Whoops. I just closed it. So you can say File, Place, and place that image, but this is back to one step before the other image that I had. And another thing I wanted to show you is when you've done text in a document, you can flatten those layers by having them the only ones on. Like, you'll have a lot of text layers because every time you do new text, you will you'll have a new layer. So if you go up to the right-hand corner of your layers document palette and click, and you'll notice that there are options. What I want is merge visible. And the reason I can't get that available is that I have a layer selected. So click away from all your layers and then go back and I only have the type layers visible. and you can merge those layers. So you only have one type layer. Now I'm going to bring up the rough sketch again, and I'm just going to start to place images. And I have a background, middle ground, foreground area that I made. So we want to put the image of me. I sort of did a couple of filters on a photograph, but pretend that that's a drawing or a painting, because I didn't have time this afternoon to do any one. I haven't done one recently, a drawing, a painting of myself. Anyway, so I'm going to turn on my foreground layer, and I'm going to place it on the foreground layer. So you notice that those layers are locked. So I'm going to unlock. I actually locked them when I made them. So I'm going to unlock the foreground layer, and then I'm going to place the image of myself that I painted in a mask. So I'm going to say place embedded, and I'm going to the image, the TIFF. Now I saved it as a TIFF after I made this image. And so like, let's say you'll draw something and you could do a real drawing or take a photograph or do it in Photoshop or Illustrator. That's what I would like you to do. And then you could save it as a PDF to work on it, to bring it into Photoshop and work on it, if it's an Illustrator file, for instance. Or you could, in my case, what I did, I was working on in Photoshop, I painted out the mask, then it had transparent background, and I saved it as a TIFF because I wanted to have a transparent background. So transparent backgrounds are available in TIFFs, GIFs, and PNGs. So you cannot, just paint out on a JPEG or save it as a JPEG and still have a transparent background. It will have a white background always. So I saved it as a TIFF so I could maintain the transparency. And I'm going to click on it and say place. So I'm placing it into the foreground layer on my in my document. So notice it's transparent, and I bring it over, and it's covering up part of my image, but I actually, part of my writing and my rough, but that's what I want. And I actually want it a little bigger than this. So it comes in with a box that you can resize. I'm going to hold shift to make sure that I constrain the proportions when I resize. And I want it to be about that big. I think that's what my plan here says, that it's about that big. So I'm actually going according to the plan. I mean, I'm putting things in and resizing according to the plan. I'm also going to place so that you can see me do it. And by the way, this painting was also done on a document that was 200 DPI. So I'm matching resolutions. So everything that you paint, if you are going to, have generally, everything's going to be 200 DPI when you open, when you make a new document. So I'm going to hit return, which embeds this plate. And then I'm going to go place again and place embedded and go to the picture of myself. So I'm collaging. I'm using paintings, drawings, and photography. And I'll put it in here. I'm going to have a bunch of photographs of myself younger. So you can also resize this whole, I don't know if you need to anymore. No, you don't. It's constrained. So you can just pull at the corner. You don't have to hold shift. And we used to have to hold shift and start to put them in. Now notice that I have a background of hills. So you have to decide how big or how small, or if you want things to overlap. So, it just depends on what you decide about your composition. So by making this image smaller, I actually increased its resolution, right? Because resolution is dots per square inch. And if you already have so many pixels, you have to think of every image in Photoshop as pixels. then the resolution becomes greater when you make the size smaller, because all these things have to maintain their number. They're constrained to the ratio that they already have. So there's my image. If I made it a whole lot bigger, as I told you, it's possible, but you will start to see pixelation when you try to print it, or even if it's, if you try to make it too big, even on the screen. Okay, that is my lecture. Notice that I was working in the foreground. If you think that one of these elements, I think that my self-portrait should be in the foreground, but maybe you feel that this is more the middle ground. It's not like Illustrator where you can move elements from one layer to another. You have to replace them actually. So if I wanted this, the image that I just brought in to be, seems to have made new layers, which is interesting every time I place something. So you'll just have to, I guess, rename those or merge down. Oh, maybe, yeah, or just merge those layers. So you could put that image onto the middle ground by merging those two, but I would just rename them. Anyway, that's my lecture about resolution. Thank you.